Well, hello everyone. I'm Chantel Treadway with Keller Williams Collective, and I serve Kentucky and Indiana. This is Next Matters Conversations, and this is where we break down real estate topics in a very simple, real world way. And today I'm joined by David Powell with Pillar to Post Home Inspectors. David, thank you so much for coming today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
We appreciate it. So, buying a home is very exciting, but at the same time, it can be very overwhelming because you're making one of the largest financial decisions of your life. And while everyone can fall in love with kitchens and paint colors and backyards and things, you know, the inspection is where we really understand what's going on in the home behind the scenes. And I think probably unfortunately, one of the biggest misconceptions in real estate is that a home inspection is made it's meant to scare buyers away, not help them. But in reality, that's exactly what Mr. Powell and others like him are trying to do. They're trying to educate and protect you. So as we go forward with inspections, we want buyers to make informed decisions. It's not about finding that perfect house, maybe, but we know everything has maintenance items, but there could be some safety concerns or some system concerns that they might be unaware of, and that's where people like David come in. And we also, as realtors, and I think really everyone involved in a transaction, you want buyers to be able to budget better, so you don't want them to have major surprises. And we want them to be prepared as they're moving forward. And it's not really about them just buying the home or whether or not they do that, but it's about helping them prepare for home ownership in reality. So home inspections can also protect sellers too. I've had some cases where there were some things that came up during the inspection that they were unaware of, and it really could have been a big issue or even a safety issue for them. And when everybody is communicating, then it helps the transaction to go smoother, and the expectations are definitely set a lot more clearly. And I'm all about setting those expectations properly because I think there's nothing worse than not understanding that something could have been an issue or could be something that they might potentially see. So I think sometimes a home inspection can feel very intimidating because you as home inspectors, you're documenting everything you see. Doesn't mean that the house is falling apart, right? It's just that as a good home inspector, you're trying to separate maintenance items from true concerns. So, as we kind of go forward, I wanted to bring you in because I thought it would be a great opportunity for a professional like you to share what you're seeing every day and let a buyer know what they should really be paying attention to during these inspections. So, David, I do want to turn it over to you. To get started, what do you think probably is the biggest issues that are found, or maybe the number one issue that's found, or the biggest misconception that buyers have as they start to hire you and work with you?
Um, okay. Well, and I don't know if I can relate it to one item. I mean, as far as what is the biggest item found, lo lots of things. And as you talked about, no home is perfect. And so even a brand new home, we're going to probably run into an issue or two, and maybe with brand new issues, too strong of a word, but might run into a concern, something that needs to be corrected. And everything can be corrected, even a serious foundation issue. So if a buyer has fallen in love with a home, they like the location, they like the layout, anything we find during the home inspection can be addressed more than likely. It just depends on how much it's going to take to address those things. And so, like you said, the home inspection is not meant to scare people away. It's meant to educate people. Kind of, it's really a snapshot in time. What is the condition of the home today, the day of the inspection? Um, and it's not a pass or fail, and that's probably the misconception. People will ask, well, did we pass or did we fail? And it's not a pass or fail. It's just, it's educating you to the condition of the home as of today, the day I looked at it. It's not a code inspection, although and we don't reference codes, but we do talk about safety issues. So and codes usually are start because of safety issues, and so we might talk about some safety issues, but then the functionality of the systems and components in that house. And so then maybe I've gone a long way around to say what are some of the common findings we find, and it's usually simple things, ungrounded three-prong receptacles. An older home, before we started having a grounded electrical system, had two-prong receptacles. Over time, those get changed out to a three-prong receptacle, but maybe not without running that ground wire. So ungrounded, receptacles, maybe some small plumbing leaks. Might be something the seller doesn't even know about. Maybe the drain um, plug is leaking. And it just leaks a few drops every time they brush their teeth or every time they wash their hands. And so it's not enough that they've noticed, but over time, those few drops falling on your cabinet start to break down that cabinet. And then over the years, that cabinet breaks down and even more, and then maybe some mold starts growing. So it's usually small things
Mm.
that, when left unaddressed, build into something larger.
Right, right. Do you see red flags necessarily? Like, what do you think truly deserves your immediate attention, of the typical things you see on a report?
Um, Red flags or immediate attention would maybe be active water leaks, kind of like I just described. So maybe something that's a little bit more than just that small drip, but an active water leak. Um, Maybe HVAC that's not venting correctly. If that HVAC isn't vented correctly, even the seller is going to want to know about that, not just the buyer that's moving in, but the seller, because that could be putting carbon monoxide in their home. Um, Temperature pressure relief valves from a water heater. If it's dripping, that means it's that valve is failing, and that valve is a safety item. And so you don't want a failed safety item attached to your water heater. And that's similar to like a battery in a smoke detector. When it starts beeping,
Right.
that battery is failing, not the smoke detector itself. But if you then were to have a fire, that smoke detector wouldn't work. So if that water heater then would to build up too much pressure, that valve wouldn't work, and then that water heater bursts.
And that's a hot mess.
Yeah, exactly.
So as we're out and about, as realtors showing properties to our buyers, what should buyers maybe be more focused on? What's something that I could share with them and training? Like, I know that I'm looking out for certain things, but at the same time, we have
Sure,
to be
yeah,
very careful not to, lead them to a place that where I'm not an expert.
exactly. But we really want them to look past cosmetics, and to the actual systems and functionality of those systems. And so, does the house have, that saying, I guess, good bones?
Right.
Is it nice and stable? So looking at the roof, as you're walking up to the property, looking at the roof, does everything look like it should? Or do you see, missing shingles, flashing that's bent or damaged? Do you see downspouts that look like um, they're not draining correctly and that water drains next to the home? Does it appear that the home is being maintained, or can you see neglected maintenance? Kind of the examples I just gave: shingles out of place,
Mhm.
bent flashing, downspouts. I mean, that's someone that's not maintaining the home. So what else isn't being maintained?
Yeah, it's kind of a saying that we have, if you can see things that aren't being taken care of, what else can I not see? And I think
Exactly.
that's the biggest thing that scares people as I take them through for sure. Um, in looking at the misconceptions, I do have a lot of people like even other agents, they're like they're going to find things. They're trying to crash this deal. They're trying to make my life hard. Sellers feel that
Right.
way sometimes. What's something that I can say to people to soothe them and let them know you're really in their corner, really on both sides. You're in their corner to try to make this be a good transaction for everyone.
I guess, kind of the same thing is, we're there to educate the buyer to the home, or, we do market ready inspections too. So we're educating the
Right.
seller. Now, maybe, they've been living there, so they know the home, but we might still be educating them to something that's going on in their home. And so, it's not meant to be, oh, I got you, or look at all the things we found. It's just meant to say, here is the condition of the home. And I always tell people at the very beginning of the inspection, our goal is to identify, are there any major defects or major repairs? Doesn't mean there's going to be, but are there any? But of course, maintenance items, things that are part of home ownership that need to be maintained, are going to work their way into the report. But those aren't the big red flags. Those are just part of home ownership.
Exactly. And I think that is one of the reality checks is that you are going to have to maintain things and it is going to have a cost behind it. So it's about planning and budgeting for sure.
Right.
I see that quite often. I know this year there's going to be a change in the form for appraisals, and I think it's by November 2nd, the new form is going to be mandatory. I'm noticing already that I'm seeing more of a almost an inspection report with appraisers. Are you seeing anything on that front yet? And have there been any major code changes or anything that we might need to be aware of this year?
Not that I'm aware of. And so, I mean, they're similar but different with the, appraisers and the home inspectors. And so, if something on the appraisal side is different and they're filling out some different paperwork, I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
I'd be interested to know what it is.
Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly.
um,
Yeah, we all
but
need
you're
to
right, because
work in
usually,
tandem.
right, yeah, because
Yeah.
usually those appraisers, they're coming in, they're looking for their things. Um, and some of them will do some crossover, but some of them don't either. And so it sounds like maybe there's going to be a little bit more crossover for what that appraiser is looking at.
And I don't think it's anything to be necessarily scared of. I just have noticed that they're getting a little bit more stringent on asking a lot more details than they had before. So I think,
Okay,
again, and that's where maybe helping the seller ahead of time, if they have any issues, that might be a good time for them to call you before they even list.
sure,
So
right,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely help both sides. So, well, this is great information. I would love to open this up to some questions. Anybody, is there something particular that you would like David to answer for you? Feel
David, I
free.
have a quick question. As
Sure.
loan officer, we have a lot of appraisals that come back about crawl space issues. Like, is that something, or is there a way we can let sellers know, like, hey, your space has to be accessible when you're getting a loan? Because a lot of people don't think about it. They built the deck over it, or they've poured
Right.
concrete and closed it up halfway. So that's a big thing on our end is the crawl spaces.
I mean, you're right. They need to be accessible for the inspection. And a lot of times, I'll have to make a note that it wasn't accessible or I was only able to get partway into the crawl space. And that, I recommend, that it be further evaluated, after it's made accessible. And I'll go back and look at them if it's, made accessible, in a reasonable amount of time. Um, and so yeah, as far as communicating that, that's probably, like, falls with those agents to say,
Mhm, yeah,
hey, we've got an inspection scheduled, and more on the listing side, hey, the inspection is scheduled, and I mean, they're already making things like, electrical panel, attic, but also, of course, that crawl space, needs to be accessible so that deal moves forward. Um,
right.
Yeah.
if it's not accessible, then there's a holdup. Then they're doing some work, some repairs to get it accessible. Then we're rescheduling to get back out there, and that just delays the whole thing. So if from the get-go it's ready to go, and that again, I think shows on the buyer side you know, if the seller is, maintaining their home, getting it ready to sell, making things accessible, you can tell they've probably treated that home well or maintained it versus they're just ignoring everything.
Mhm,
And so hopefully that brings a little bit more confidence to the buyer.
absolutely. Anyone else?
Okay, I have two.
Okay, great.
So, David, like the things that you mentioned, like looking at the roof and the flashing and water staying near the home. If you're inspecting on a nice sunny day, how do you figure out that
How do we figure out what's
those
going on?
how
So
do you
I'm
figure
looking
yeah.
I'm looking at the grading, around the house. Does it look like water will pool next to the house or not? And so if I think it looked like the downspouts are draining right next to the foundation and there's, not any slope to let that water run away and it looks like it's going to pool next to the house, we'll make those comments. We can look for water staining. So, if there's some bad flashing on the roof, when I'm in the attic, I'm looking in that area of, where I saw the flashing outside. Now I'm in the attic. I'm looking for any water stains that show that maybe water does get in here. Or if it's been happening for a while, then now I'm looking at water damage. And so there are some clues that we can use to help track where moisture's been in the past, even if it's a nice sunny day.
Yeah, good deal. Anyone
Okay. All right.
else?
Oh, can I
Oh,
ask
you
another
had
one?
two. You
Sorry.
had two. That's right.
Yeah,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Okay, so now this is my real world example and it's frightening. My across the street neighbor had a tree fall on her roof. I Long story short, it took forever to get the roof fixed, and I feel very confident that it did not get tarped a couple of times when there was rain. So I mean, there probably isn't, but is there something that you can look for? Like what that's my fear, right? Like the
Right.
TV
So,
show that used to be on Homes on Homes or whatever,
right.
and he finds all these things. Like how do you find the things that
So
you
now,
like right
yeah.
now
So
it's got a
now,
brand new roof.
yeah, a year later, they put the house on the market. We know there probably was some moisture that got in the attic in the past, and where did it go? Did it damage, some ceilings? Did it get into some walls? And so, we're going to look for clues. We're going to look for water staining, starting in that attic. Do I see water damage? What's the insulation look like? If a lot of rain got in there, you know, that insulation is going to show some damage or some moisture. The ceiling below that area will potentially show some damage or some moisture. And so it's always just looking for those clues. Now, say it's a year later and they're putting that house on the market, but they paint it before they do that. So
Mm.
now maybe water stains are gone. Um, as far as the ceiling. In the attic, I might still see some evidence. And so, how much water and did it do any damage or has it now dried out? We can look for signs of fungal growth. Is there mold? And we can do mold testing if the buyer wants. So we can take some air samples and see, are there mold air more than there should be? Mold's naturally occurring. You're always going to have some, but is there more there than there should be that could indicate then we have some hidden growth somewhere in the house?
Good deal. Did that answer you, Kim?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, good deal. Anyone else?
I got one for David here. Is how often do you kind of see these home inspections save buyers from like major issues that come?
Um, that's kind of a hard one to answer because I guess I don't always know, what they were already looking at, what they already knew about. Um, and then what happens next, after the inspection, after I've done my report and turned it into the buyer, I don't know the next steps they always take. But I would say we run across, um, I do a summary, and the summary usually has, either those major defects or repairs, some safety issues, or just FYIs that they should do, address sooner than later. This is a maintenance item, but you want to address it now so it doesn't get worse. And so the things I put in that summary, I mean, I build a summary with every report. Um, but I would say the one that has significant issues was maybe half the time, maybe a little less than half, 40% of the time. That's not to say that 60% of the inspections, were unneeded. Not at
Yeah.
all, because there's still lots of information in that report that talks about, issues and conditions and things that need to be addressed as they move into the home.
Good deal. Anyone else? No. Um, as people get ready for an inspection, one of the biggest things that I think I see as an agent is, unfortunately, there are some inspectors out there that I think they're very passionate about their work and that sometimes they can get the buyers a little worked up. And so what I usually tell my buyers is, try to look for someone that's going to explain everything to you and make it very clear, but at the same time, not throw you into a state of panic.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
would you have any advice to a buyer that has not done the inspection yet, but you're getting ready to work with them?
Okay. Well, I would say, I mean, yeah, you do want an inspector that I describe myself as a non-alarmist. And so, I mean, we're like we've been talking about, we're going to find some things wrong with the home, and wrong's probably too strong of a word. We're going to find some things, some issues, some concerns, but they can all be addressed. And so there's no reason to scare people. And I really focus on functionality. Especially, as codes and building practices change and improve, it doesn't mean the old one. I mean, yes, they will probably improve because this is better than it used to be, but it doesn't mean what we used to do was bad or unsafe. So do things still function the way they should? And it might not be up to current standards, but if it's still functioning the way it should, it's not an issue. Now we might talk
Gotcha.
about it, it's not up to today's standards, um, but it doesn't mean that it's bad.
Good deal. Good deal. I did have one just come through at the corner here on new construction. Uh, I know that they can have issues. Do you normally see particular things with new construction? Because more and more we have people very interested in new construction because of the cost of things versus the
Exactly right. Yeah.
existing homes, right?
Um, so what do I see most with new construction is just projects that are still being finished, grading around the house, downspouts, maybe finishing up some plumbing. So that's what we usually run into is projects that are still being finished. But have I found some things on? Yeah, I have found shingles that are missing, especially in hidden spots, behind a chimney or something like that.
Mm.
So, we're missing shingles. I can see the sheathing. I have found where the waistline to the house wasn't attached to the city street
Mm.
yet.
Wow.
Um, and so, water started backing up in the home. And that really was just, communication with tradesmen, one person doing one job, another person doing another
Mm.
job, and then somebody else coming along and not knowing that those job wasn't done and hanging some drywall. So we can't even see that sewer line wasn't connected any longer.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
so big things do come up in new construction, but that's not the norm. The norm is it's usually the builder is still finishing up some projects. And it's really just giving that buyer peace of mind. Yet we did an inspection and these are the handful of things we found, and they've got peace of mind to move forward with the house.
That's great. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. We always appreciate you joining, and it's just, I feel so blessed that I have such good people around me.
No, yeah.
So again, I thank everyone for joining us today for another Next Matters conversations. Our goal with these short sessions is simply to make buyers feel less overwhelmed and sellers too with their certain topics, of course, and just to help people make more confident decisions in this. It's kind of a gray area sometimes when you're looking at things that are across the country versus locally here. And I think it can be very overwhelming and confusing. So that's our goal here, is to try to break it down, make it short and simple. And just thank you everybody for joining in today. And as always, follow us for more conversations like these, because next matters. Thank you, everyone.